So here's a email I got from my new subscription to sovereignman.com. Notes from the field. Santiago, Chile. Prosperity is like a Jenga tower. Take one piece out and the whole thing can fall. That's a direct quote from John Williams, the president of the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank, in a speech he gave a few weeks ago. Prosperity is like a Jenga tower. Take one piece out and the whole thing can fall. He could just as easily been talking about propaganda. The Fed, the White House, Wall Street, the media have a vested interest in peddling a certain narrative about the economy. The narrative goes something like this: everything's awesome. Stop asking questions. But if you look at their own data, their numbers tell a different story. And yes, the revisions. Just read another revised report today. 2 months later, revised downward. It's always revised downward. It's worse. Didn't hear a peep about it on the media. Mainstream media. My team and I were recently studying U.S. manufacturing indices, something that has traditionally been a strong indicator of recession. This data is collected by the Federal Reserve. They survey manufacturing businesses and ask if factory orders are growing, shrinking, or relatively unchanged. You'd think that based on this everything is awesome narrative, that all the numbers would be growing. And yet, much of the data show that manufacturing is actually shrinking. Or, to be even more clear, that the U.S. is in a manufacturing recession. In Texas, for example, just 4% of businesses report that they are growing. 38% are shrinking. The Philadelphia Fed's manufacturing index has been in recession since September of last year. The San Francisco Fed's total factor productivity is also reporting negative growth. The New York Fed's Empire State Manufacturing Index was at minus 16.6 for February. In fact, the last time the index was below minus 15 was in October of 2008. Remember that? The last recession? Excuse me. 10 months into the recession. The numbers are all pretty clear. There's an obvious industrial and manufacturing downturn, but that shouldn't matter because Fox News, CNN, CNBC, and the White House tell us that consumer spending drives the U.S. economy. Industrial production is irrelevant. They run headlines like retail sales rise more than expected as part of the good news narrative. And speaking of retail sales, that's what I just looked at recently. Revised. Wasn't as good as we thought. Walmart, our sales growth this year, 2016, we're forecasting none. We're going to close 200-something stores, 169, I think, in the U.S. alone. How's that sales growth for you? Retail sales. This sounds mysteriously like fewer people killed by police than expected, or fewer airlines declare bankruptcy than expected. But the reality is that prosperity isn't a Jenga puzzle. It's quite simple. You have to produce more than you consume. Strangely, though, the financial establishment cheers when consumption is up, and they totally ignore the data when production is down. And then it gets revised. That semi-okay data that you were tooting your horns about has been revised down to garbage. CNN, crickets. Fox News, crickets. MSNBC, crickets. That's what you hear. And no surprise, if you look at the long-term data, you'll see that a manufacturing downturn, i.e. less production, almost invariably precedes a recession. There were large downturns in manufacturing and industrial production in 2008, 2001, 1990, 1980 to 81, 1974 and 1970, and every other recession since the Great Depression. More importantly, out of the 17 recessions over the last century, the longest period between them was about 10 years. The average time between recessions is just about 68 months. Bottom line, the economy is due for a recession, and the indicators suggest that one may already be in the works. The bigger challenge is that both the Federal Reserve and the federal government are out of ammo. As in tools in the toolbox, the Federal Reserve likes to refer to. We got some tools in the toolbox if the recovery isn't quick enough. And okay. The U.S. government spent trillions fighting the last recession back in 2008. But back then, the U.S. government debt level was only $9.5 trillion. So they could theoretically afford the bailouts. Today, government debt exceeds $19 trillion, well in excess of 100% of GDP. They don't have the ability to bail out anyone, including themselves. The Fed doesn't have any room either. On average, the Fed cuts interest rates by 3.5% in a recession. And the smallest interest rate cut in any recession during the last 60 years was 2%. Today, interest rates are at a quarter, 0.25%. Next to nothing. They've been at near zero levels since the last recession. That means that even if the next or current recession is extremely mild, and the Fed cuts rates by just a small 2%, interest rates are practically guaranteed to go below zero and become negative. Which means what? They're going to charge you money to keep your money in the banks while they recklessly take your money and invest and gamble on Wall Street and hopefully win. But if they lose, we need a bailout again. Mommy, Daddy, government, we need a bailout again. We made a mistake. Or they can just do what John Corzine did. Steal money out of his customers' allocated accounts. That money's not supposed to be touched. It's private. Not for old Corzine. He took the money, invested it in some European debt, bond, something, I forgot what it was, lost the bet, and immediately went bankrupt. Lost his customers' money because he stole it. Is he in jail? Did he get handcuffs? Was he even questioned by the so-called authorities? No, and no. He was an Obama donor. What's the chances of that? So it says, again, that assuming they cut by a mere 2%, they're guaranteed to go below zero or negative. And from there, it's a very short road to capital controls. Capital controls are a policy tool used by desperate governments to keep money trapped in a failing financial system. Think about it. When rates turn negative, who in his or her right mind would keep money in a savings account that's going to charge you interest for the privilege of letting a banker gamble your funds away on the latest investment fad? A rational person would close his or her account, or at least maintain a minimum balance and hold cash. But if too many people take their money out of the banks, then the entire system collapses. And governments have shown they will do whatever it takes to prevent this from happening, even if it means restricting what you can or cannot do with your own money or your own savings account. We're already seeing bank withdrawal restrictions in Europe, as well as some loud calls to ban cash on both sides of the Atlantic, right? You've heard that recently. Ban cash altogether. These things are happening. And with the recession data in particular, we're not talking about what if. We're talking about what is. Even if all the data is wrong, and there's never another recession again until the end of time, you won't be worse off for having a plan B that protects your family, your savings, and your livelihood from such obvious risks. So think about this. The club wants to ban cash. Let's go all digital. And assuming they have their way, one world currency that's digital. Even if it's not, and it's just digital in your particular country with your particular dollar, whatever, you can't take that out now, can you? You can't say, I'm nervous. Oh, you're charging negative rates. You're going to charge me money to keep my freaking money in your bank? You're charging me? I'm taking it out. Oh, wait, I can't take it out. It's digital. Can't take it out. It's got to be in a bank somewhere. Well, I'll take it out of Bank of America and put it in Chase, JP Morgan. Oh, same thing over there. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do to you. I'll go to Citibank. Can't do that either. PNC? Can't do that either. Negative, negative, negative everywhere. Why? Because the Federal Reserve sets those rates. And the banks comply. Federal Reserve says negative, everyone has to go negative. So your digital dollars would literally be forced to stay in some banking institution, which also means forcing you to pay the interest, the negative interest that they set it to. That's what a world would look like in a digital dollar system. That is exactly the world that the club wants. So while you still have time, you should be keeping some money at your house, cash, and you should absolutely have some precious metals. You already know this. So again, this is sovereignman.com. Guy has great articles all the time. I signed up for his email, subscription or whatever. And it looks like daily or so I'm getting emails about little articles he writes. And these are, like I said, this guy's on top of stuff. Simon Black. So if you're looking for somewhere to subscribe to like this, I would say go to sovereignman.com and sign up. It doesn't cost me anything. I did notice once I got the email, there's like a part 2 that I could go to, and it does cost money, an actual monetary subscription. But I personally am not going to do it. I'm just going to see what this one's about, the free one, and I catch his articles all the time. So anyways, take care.